All right, everybody, welcome. I will call this meeting to order. Before I do, I want to acknowledge that with great respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. So with that, we've got a couple of councillors coming in remotely. So I will take an attendance. Mayor Martin, Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Day, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Baxter.
I'm here.
And Councillor Parkinson.
I'm here as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So moving on to the approval of the agenda, we have the near term, long term, and the committee of the whole agenda for June. If there are no errors or additions or deletions, I'll consider them approved by unanimous consent. And I'm not seeing any opposition to that, so they are so approved. We have one set of minutes from committee of the whole, May 16th. If there are no errors or omissions, I'll consider them approved through unanimous consent. And I'm not seeing any hands, so they are so approved or adopted. Under 4, public participation, I understand we have one person registered to speak, Kat McMicken. Kat, can you hear me? You can go ahead.
I can. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thanks, Kat.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you this evening. It's been a while, so it's nice to be here today. I will make this short and sweet. My call this evening is in regards to the proposed bylaw zoning changes for the Latoria commercial spaces. I am in complete support of this opportunity. I strongly believe that all healthy communities require a personal care space that will allow for potential doctors' offices, chiropractors, dentists, etc. Although I am aware that doctors are not a municipal issue, but rather a provincial, I still believe that it is, if we provide the adequate space, there is a possibility of attracting those types of businesses to our community. This is a reason why I believe that this bylaw change / zoning change is so vital to our growing and developing neighborhood. Once again, I do appreciate the opportunity of being able to speak with you this evening. Like I said, it was going to be short and sweet. I just wanted to ensure that the proposed bylaw zoning change goes through, and I hope that you all have a great evening tonight.
Great, thank you, Kat. I will open it up to the public if there's anyone from the public who wishes to make a statement, ask a question. I think everyone's with an applicant or staff, so we will move on. We did receive one item of written submission rather regarding the cannabis retail store at 681 Allendale Road, Unit B, and that will be reflected on the agenda and in the minutes. So we'll move right on to item number 5.1 from Desiree Gibbons on rezoning amendment application 365 Latoria Boulevard, Area 2. Desiree, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next item in the agenda is the reintroduction of the rezoning application for the CD28 zone, Area 2. The subject property is 365 Latoria Boulevard. So staff are recommending that amendments be made to the CD28 zone to permit a broader range of uses other than retail stores on the first story of a mixed-use building fronting Commons Road, including a limited amount of professional medical offices. Staff are further recommending that this amending bylaw be brought back for first, second, and third reading, and that prior to final adoption of the bylaw, that the owner be required to register a Section 219 covenant on the title restricting the amount of ground level medical and professional offices, as well as regulating the form and character of the building. So as you may recall, this application was first introduced at the April 25th council meeting. at which time the proposal was to amend the CD28 zone to permit ground level professional medical offices in a mixed-use building fronting Commons Road. Council deferred the application to a future meeting date to allow staff the opportunity to work with the applicant to find a way to limit the amount of ground level professional and medical offices facing the public street. Staff have since worked with the applicant to set some parameters around ground level medical offices, as well as professional offices on the proposed site, as well as to expand the scope of the request to also consider additional uses on the ground floor. So just to refresh your memory of the site context, the subject property is 365 Latoria Boulevard, which is located in the CD28 zone. It is designated in the OCP as Seaside Village. According to the land use bylaw, the subject site is in Area 2 of the CD28 zone. Area 2 permits a range of residential and commercial uses, including apartments, assembly and entertainment uses, attached housing, bakeries, daycares, eating and drinking establishments, medical and professional offices, personal services, pet daycares, retail stores, and more. However, Area 2 does not permit any other use other than a retail store to be on the first story of a mixed-use building fronting Commons Road. Further, Area 2 prohibits ground-level professional and medical offices in mixed-use buildings fronting a public street. As mentioned earlier, the subject site is designated as Seaside Village in the OCP. This is a designation that supports a range of commercial, retail, institutional, and residential uses. The Seaside Village is one of the city's two primary centers and is the focus of major future commercial and residential growth. The proposal is also subject to the objectives of the Royal Bay Area Plan, and more specifically, the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan. According to the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, the subject property is considered mixed use, which encourages a pedestrian-oriented retail street. It's intended to support a mix of commercial and residential uses that will complement the retail core located on the other side of Commons Road. The design guidelines for Latoria South are applicable to this proposal and require that buildings facing Commons Road have active street frontages and include design elements like large front windows, continuous overhead weather protection, and high quality and colorful signage. So as mentioned earlier, Area 2 of the CD28 zone does not permit any other uses outside of retail stores to be located on the ground floor of a mixed-use building fronting Commons Road. The intent behind this provision was to ensure that the CD28 zone would align with the Latoria South Sub-Area Plan, which calls for a pedestrian-oriented retail village along Commons Road. However, the applicant has explained that there might not be enough market demand for retail stores to be the only use occupying the ground floor of the proposed mixed-use building. They are therefore requesting that the zoning be revisited and amended to offer more flexibility for them to respond to the changing market conditions. And the recommendation before you is to amend the zone to permit additional uses other than retail stores, including assembly and entertainment uses, bakeries, eating and drinking establishments, personal services, pet daycares, and a limited amount of professional medical offices. Staff have reviewed similar zoning in other municipalities that have created a pedestrian-oriented main street and can confirm that these proposed uses are in line with what is permitted by other municipalities. In addition, rather than completely prohibiting ground level office uses along Commons Road, the applicant is requesting an amendment to the zone to permit a limited amount of professional medical offices. As per Council's recommendation from the April 25th Council meeting, staff have worked with the applicant to set some parameters around how many offices will be located on the ground floor. To ensure that the ground floor office uses will not result in this pedestrian-oriented public realm along Commons Road, the applicant is proposing and has agreed to limit the amount of ground floor offices to a maximum of area of 50% of the total ground floor area of leasable space in the proposed mixed-use building. For added assurance, the applicant has also agreed to register a Section 219 covenant on title, details of which can be found in the recommendation. And just as a reminder, this for communication, a notice sign was installed on the property in March. According to the Local Government Act, this application does not require a public hearing, as the zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the OCP. Should council choose to not require a public hearing, the public will be invited to provide input prior to first reading of the bylaw. And essentially, this will give the public opportunity to provide comment earlier in the rezoning process. Page 9 of the staff report illustrates how council's decision to hold or not hold a public hearing will impact the processing and timelines of this application. So with respect to the rezoning application before you, the staff are presenting the following options. Option 1 is the staff recommendation. Option 2 is staff recommendation plus a requirement to hold a public hearing. Option 3 is to defer the application for further information. And option 4 is to deny the application. Right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Desiree.
Matt is also here.
Matt, did you want to say a few words before it comes to committee? Perfect. Thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to committee. I have Mayor Martin first, and then Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Staff, could you please identify medical offices? Can you please define the professions that fit within that medical office designation?
Sure. So it should be a range of, I'm just going to pull up the land use bylaw real quick. I think it should be under the definition section. So just give me a moment. Okay, sorry about that. So medical offices include medical clinic, veterinary clinic, dentist, chiropractor, massage therapist, physiotherapist, acupuncturist, holistic medical practitioner. And that's the definition for the CD28 zone, or it's included, it applies to the CD28 zone specifically too.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Next is Councillor Baxter, followed by Councillors Kobayashi, Jansen, and Day. Michael? You're on mute, Michael. You haven't done that for a while.
Right. So I'm looking at the recommendation on the front page of the report. And it suggests that uses on the first story of any building fronting the north parcel line of Area 2 allowed are assembly, I think you read them out, assembly and entertainment uses, bakeries, etc. And it includes personal services and pet daycares. And yet when we go further down to the section that deals with design guidelines, only medical offices and professional offices are called up as being controlled as to the total ground floor area. So given the desire for more medical offices, I'm kind of puzzled as to why medical offices isn't included in the first part. But then I'm also puzzled as to why pet daycares is not included in the second part. So I'm going to suggest, in fact, I'm going to move the recommendation, but with the change that in the amendment of section 1033.52A, the words personal services and pet daycares be removed and replaced with medical offices and professional offices. And that the in the design guidelines section 1 part of that recommendation, that the words medical offices and professional offices be removed and replaced with the medical and professional offices be the same, and that assembly and entertainment uses be added to you know what, I'm going to leave that part alone. So what I'm proposing is the recommendation, but removing personal services, removing pet daycares and replacing with medical services and professional offices.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I just want to make sure with staff that you're okay with that. That's just considered more housekeeping than anything. Jasmine?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Baxter. So the way in which the CD28 is structured, it has section 10.33.5.2.b, which actually speaks to the prohibition of any uses, which speaks to that professional and medical uses. So I think we have captured adding the professional and medical uses in the staff recommendation. Is a structure in a somewhat messy way, because it's following the flow of the bylaw, how it's structured in sections A and section B of that 10.33.5. So if you look at the council motion, just below that statement about assembly and entertainment uses, bakeries, eating, the next amendment that we are putting forward is adding professional and medical offices with the condition of the 50% caveat. So it's
that's what I'm objecting to.
Okay.
Because pet daycares are therefore not limited to a maximum area of 50%, but medical and professional offices are.
I see. So you would like that exemption to apply to not just the professional offices and medical office use, but to all of the above?
Well, I don't think we want to restrict retail stores that way. So we can't say all of the above. I don't think we want to restrict assembly and entertainment uses that way. Personally, I don't want to restrict bakeries that way. One of my favorite types of stores. But so the way I'm trying to deal with this is to take out the pet daycares and replace it with medical and professional offices. But I guess we could just eliminate pet daycares and personal services.
I'm seeing Jasmine nodding her head.
Yes, I will leave it to council if we eliminate her personal services and pet daycares and place a professional office and medical office use. Then would that mean that the exception and minimizing the space cover to 50% apply or not apply, but I think I'll leave it to your debate to clarify whether you want to impose a restriction on the office space for medical and professional services or not.
Okay, thank you. So I will keep the same speakers list now that we have the motion on the floor, and we'll go to Councillors Kobayashi, Jansen, Day, and Parkinson. Doug?
Thank you very much, Chair. Are we debating the amendment or the motion? The motion. So, okay, thank you. So I just gotta say something here because this has been really bothering me. I still don't understand why we have a cap on medical offices. What is one of the highest priorities in our community right now? Shortage of family doctors. And so we're going to restrict the number of doctors that we want to have in our community. So maybe it's 55%. Do we have to bring it back to council and change it again? That's why I don't believe in the cap. You know, it's, if you want to see a dollar store with 100% of the space in the retail area, I don't think so. So I'm just against it. I mean, I'll vote for the motion as is, but the cap is ridiculous. You know, if a bunch of doctors want to get out there and say, we're going to bring 27 doctors into Colwood, and by the way, we'll have a dietitian in there, we're going to have a nutritionist in there, and we're going to have all these other facilities for health. I don't see why we have a problem giving them all the space if they wanted. So we're unfairly capping, you know, medical. It just doesn't make sense to me. It just does not make sense, you know. And you know, like I said, in contrast, you can have a big dollar store go in there. Is that what we want in the community? Is that what we need in the community? So I question that. So I wanted to make an amendment that we remove the cap. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We'll go to Dean. So I think, so that changes the dynamic of the motion. So I think what needs to happen, Doug, because it's changing it, is to defeat the motion. And then you would move to eliminate the cap. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it was very eloquent, Councillor Kobayashi, and I agree somewhat, but then I catch myself when there doesn't seem to be any shortage whatsoever of dentists, and I wouldn't want to see a building full of dentists. So I wonder how we structure that so we can avoid that, or a building full of chiropractors, which there seems to be many of, but how we promote what you're trying to achieve as well. So maybe we'll think about that for a minute, but a couple questions for staff. Yeah, limits on types of practitioners. I know that I see that's not contemplated. So there's no, you know, if for instance, there was a rush on space for physiotherapists and they all decided to come down to Royal Bay, you know, what are we doing? Is there anything, I mean, what's your answer to that? How would we regulate that? I mean, I'm not sure how we regulate that, but what would you do?
So are you speaking to the applicant?
Sorry, the applicant, yeah.
Yeah, please, Matt. Yes.
Thank you. I think I just want to clarify one thing. So the first part of that recommendation, which addresses adding those uses in, the reason that's in there, it's really a housekeeping item, because when we originally did the rezone, we had retail stores in there. And I think we all assumed restaurants, bakery, they all fit into retail stores. But because it's not clear if they do or not, we're adding those in just to make sure we're covered to do those. So that was the reason behind the first part. I just want to clarify that. I probably should have said that before we started. To your question, we're building we see it, we're building 3,000 units at Royal Bay between North Latoria and South Latoria. So, we're trying to create a retail hub that's kind of the vehicle to help us not just be successful as a retail hub, but help us sell 3,000 units. In order to do that, we need to be able to offer a variety of tenants. So right now we're leasing the retail village across the street. And to your point, we've got offers from 3 different banks that are, we don't want to go put 3 different bank branches in, right? So we want to be able to offer kind of the breadth of retail we can for the community and to help us attract people to purchase homes at Royal Bay. So I guess that's our incentive, to make sure there's a mix of units.
So thank you. You're live to my point. I take it. It doesn't seem to be any shortage of dentists and chiropractors out there, because I guess there's a need. But a question for staff and yourself. I noticed language in there about 2 units in a row. And I started thinking about that. It's all the rage nowadays to have a doctor's office, pharmacy. So why are we locking ourselves into a situation where we would be precluding that? So they would have to go 2 doors down.
I would prefer not to, but I think basically we came into Councillor Kobayashi's point. We came in last time not wanting a cap, kind of letting the market determine what it would. We left the meeting kind of in the outcome, I think, was go back to our retail consultant or our brokerage group, figure out what the demand was. We prepared that Collier's report to kind of determine what the interest we'd had. And we thought, we'll come, in order to make sure, I guess we got this across the line, honestly, what we'd say, we'll cap ourselves at 50%. We can live with that. And, in order to try to maintain a vibrant street front, we won't have a string of 2, I think it's 2 in a row, or 3 in a row, 4 in a row, so that we try to keep the street kind of active.
I guess it's the unintended consequences of some of our, so I'll maybe chew on and ponder some kind of amendment after we hear from the rest of council, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I just want to bring us back to what the original reason for the zoning was. So the reason for the zoning is to create a desirable street front destination in Royal Bay. So we're trying to create a dynamic strip with plenty of big windows and storefronts that create interest and draw people to this area. So it isn't so much that we didn't want doctors' offices or physiotherapists or dentists or anyone else, but that in this one particular area fronting our main road, we wanted an attractive destination. So there could be doctors and dentists' office in another complex or down the road in other areas, but this particular streetscape is like, think of Robson in Vancouver, where you have stores that are of interest and you have people walking down the street, they're talking, they're enjoying, they're maybe stopping at a toy store, or they're maybe stopping at a clothing store, or maybe at a bakery or a cafe or a restaurant. That is what we set out to create here. And so now that, we're up against, okay, here, we're here. And unfortunately with COVID and everything else, it's much more difficult to fill those spots. So we're trying to find a compromise that works for the community and works for the development to create an attractive streetscape that makes you want to come out and enjoy our beautiful Royal Bay community, and is maybe even a destination for you to walk to from other parts of Colwood, for you to come to as you probably find employment maybe in Colwood or other reasons to be here. So in creating that vibrant street front what do we need to do? I don't think doggy daycares cut it either. I was recently at another small mall on a street front where they have a doggy daycare, and it's the least active. I mean, it's a lovely business. I'm not knocking the business. I'm just saying that it's not a big draw for people or, visual attraction. Most of the windows of the one that I'm thinking of have been painted over with designs or signs, and that's fine. So I could support the 50% to help us through this time while we want to encourage doctors and people who offer those types of services, but we want to also keep an active street front that's interesting and attractive to drive by or walk to or cycle to. So I think that the motion that is on the floor does that. Although I'm not quite sure on the exact wording of the motion, and I will admit I got confused listening to the explanation of the zoning. But the zoning is supposed to be for pedestrian, street front, commercial, something to draw people to it. That was the vision of the OCP. That was the vision of this zoning. If we bring doctors' offices in there, then I think the attraction is going to be perhaps somewhat reduced in terms of an attractive place to visit. Although dentists seem to have the market cornered on aquariums, so maybe they'll put a really beautiful aquarium window. But I'm hoping it will be an attractive destination. And I think the zoning is trying to realize the vision of the OCP was that we were not just creating a residential neighborhood, we were creating a residential neighborhood and the places that people who live in those houses need and want to visit. So I'll wait to hear from the rest of the council how they think this should go. I think we need maybe to refine our motion. I understand, let's not have it all be doctors. I understand, let's not have it all be coffee shops, but we need a mix that can work both for the developer who's stuck trying to fill his building with people who will pay the rent and for the community so that people have some place to go to that's attractive and valuable to them.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Day. We'll go to Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Day, I'm cognizant of the desire initially to have a pedestrian-orientated retail street here, and the information supplied as part of the report. And please correct me if I've misinterpreted this. It seemed like the examples given for I think it was Quadra Street and Sydney, and there was a third one, I forget where, they all had restrictions on the use of professional type organizations on the main floor. I think just because there is an issue with these types of businesses and trying to create the pedestrian friendly area that we are, I guess I have to ask, why has there been, and this could be to the applicant or to staff, what about the concept of putting these medical and professional offices on the second floor? Has that been explored at all?
You. It has been. I guess what I can tell you is across the street, we have about 5,000 square feet. It's our only second floor space, which is aside from the daycare across the street in the retail village in the commons. And that space, we, as of right now, have no interest on and have been marketing it for 12 months. So we are hesitant to now go ahead and plan additional second floor office space because we haven't been able to fill that one. And then I guess the other reason is we have a height cap on this parcel we're talking about today, that would permit us to do 4 stories in terms of standard story heights. And it just doesn't make sense to do 2 stories of commercial with 2 stories of residential above. It's not economical. We've never done it, and I don't think we'll look at doing it. So I think it's a combination of not seeing the demand for the second floor tenants, and we've had a perfect test across the street. And the second part being that it just doesn't make sense to build 2 stories of commercial with 2 stories of residential above.
Councillor Parkinson, did you have anything else?
Well, I have to sort of absorb that. The other question I had, and again for staff, is there actually a time difference between having a public hearing and not having a public hearing? I think one of the applications we saw might have been the cannabis store at Allendale. The timeline presented by staff had them both proceeding at the same timeline. So before we decide a public hearing or not, is there a time advantage, or what would be the advantage of skipping the public hearing?
Turn that over to Desiree or Jasmine.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I can answer that. So in terms of a public hearing or not holding a public hearing, it doesn't make any difference to the timelines per se. It more so has to do with when the public is invited to provide comments. So if you hold a public hearing, the public won't hear or won't be able to provide comment until after the second reading and before third reading of the bylaw. Whereas if you do not require a public hearing, then the public would be invited to provide input earlier in the process before council does first reading.
I think, okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I've got Councillor Baxter and then Kobayashi.
So Councillor Day hit the nail absolutely squarely on the head, but I just want to embroider on that a little bit. I think councillors should look at the map that shows the size of Area 2 and imagine only the north property line of Area 2 is under discussion here. If I'm incorrect on that, staff, please put a hand up and correct me, but as I understand it, only the north property line of Area 2 is under discussion here. The whole of the rest of Area 2, there are no restrictions on doctors' offices. And the other thing is as I believe Councillor Day referenced, and also Councillor Parkinson, doctors' offices are allowed on the second floor. My own family doctor is on the third floor. I've been to see 4 different specialists in the last 2-3 years. None of them are on the ground floor. Medical offices are such a draw that they don't need to be on the ground floor. People will take the elevator to whatever floor they need to. So I don't think we're doing anything to restrict the provision of medical offices, but I would ask staff whether we've got our bylaws right if the developer is telling us that he's not going to be building residential on top of commercial because it doesn't make any financial sense. And yet all of these doctors that I've seen, none of them are on the first floor. And so other communities have made it work. Is there something wrong with our bylaws?
No, Michael, I don't think that's what the applicant said. the applicant said it didn't make any sense to have a story of commercial with 2 stories of residential above, is what he said.
Well, yes, but if that's if our height limit is the problem there, and it would make sense to have 2 stories of commercial with 4 stories of residential above, or 5 or 6, then maybe we should be changing our bylaws to allow that.
Yeah, I think we're deviating a little bit, quite frankly, Michael, to the motion. So I'm unless you've got something else, I'm going to move on to Councillor Kobayashi to speak.
Well,
on the motion.
can we not have staff address the question?
Well, it really has nothing to do with the motion that's on the floor. Councillor Baxter, I think the question you have is just a point of interest as opposed to debating the motion. So I'm looking for information that's new that could help us make this decision. Trying to move us along. So I'm going to move on to Councillor Kobayashi, and then I'm hoping to call the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to argue at all with Councillor Day's her thoughts, and I really appreciate what she's saying. You're going to find anyways, the market's going to determine what's going to happen anyways. It's the bottom line here. And I did check, of the 13 municipalities, I did check with 6 of them. I got through to 6 of them to get a response on if anybody else has put a cap on medical and professional on ground floors. No one has one. No one. I haven't found one. So, and that's not anecdotal. I actually called and tried to find out. So, like I said, this just concerns me that we're not putting caps on anything else, but we're putting it on medical and professional. And it just doesn't hit me correctly. And you're going to find that there's no one that's going to, in the end, take 100% of the space for a medical facility. There isn't, but just the principle of that we're putting caps on this, it just doesn't make sense to me. We're not letting the market do it, and we're putting unnecessarily handcuffs on the developer right now to fill them. We start putting caps here, we're going to start putting caps on other things. I have, like I said, just from a business sense, I had 3 businesses before, which I owned, and they were all rentals within malls. And I can tell you right now, the malls were really good because we could actually sign agreements as we went on to make sure that we were the only one. If we provided this service, sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. In 2 of the 3 malls that we were in, we were successful in 2. They said, nope, we'll make sure that no other business like yours is in there. So we did that, from a business point of view. But just this, us legislating this as a municipal government, come on, folks. I just think this is just a crazy thing to do. With all due respect, though, that you're going to find anyways that, if the market is out there and bakeries and bookstores and everybody else, cafes, you're going to find them all competing for this, regardless. And but it's just putting these arbitrary caps on this, there's no data that says, it's 50%, it should be 50%. So like I said, I asked the question again, what happens if it's just 52%? Does it have to come back to council for approvals again? I don't think so. This is just a waste of time and money. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Day, did you have something you need to add?
Yeah, just quickly, I just wanted to point out that you had said you had an offer from 3 different banks who wanted to move in there. And I was going to let you know that that's not a bad thing. It's actually very supportive of a number of businesses, including where I work. I work for a lawyer. We often have to access multiple banks every single day. So having banks co-located is good for business. It's also good for residents because almost everybody has to shop around for a bank, make sure your manager stays in line and provides you the best possible deal on your very expensive mortgage. But all joking aside, it is very helpful, and they have been extremely busy in the last months with real estate and other things. And I see that there are not many opportunities to go to a bank where you're not standing in a lineup. So more branches is more helpful to the residents of Colwood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question now on the motion. Those that are opposed? I just see Councillor Kobayashi opposed, so the motion passes. Move on to item 5.2 from Jasmine Hernandez on revised proposal rezoning application RZ 21007, 2353 and 2361 Souk Road. Jasmine.
Hi there. So this application was in front of Committee of the Whole back in March 7th of this year. And the applicant heard the comments and concern around the committee table and went back to his team and provided a revised submission for you to consider tonight. The revised submission, okay, 1 second. The location of the property is 2 properties located at the southeast corner, southeast corner of Veterans Memorial Parkway and Souk Road. The property is, there's substantial grade changes from the property. The portion of the property that is access of a Wildcat Trail is about 2 meters higher in elevation than the portion of the property along Souk Road and Veterans Memorial Parkway. So there's some grade change in that lot. The revised concept plan has been revised to remove the gas station component, to expand the commercial retail units from approximately 700 square meters that was formerly proposed to closer to over 900 square meters now. The massing and the scale of the commercial units has been increased to give more street presence and credence along the Souk Road and Veterans Memorial Parkway. The access of a Veterans Memorial Parkway has been eliminated, further reducing the circulation space and the necessary on this development, and thus increasing the size of that commercial retail unit located along Veterans Memorial Parkway. The separation between that smaller retail unit and the larger commercial space fronting Souk Road, it's a necessary gap created by a BC Hydro statutory right-of-way, so that location for parking in a seating area and landscaping is a good use of a statutory right-of-way where no building can be located. All the parking in this new proposal is now screened and located behind a building or behind landscaping. There is still the EV charging component that is now screened off of Souk Road, but located prominently on and right off that Souk Road entrance. And the car wash building is now located on the opposite property line, so along the east property line, giving further space and separation from the 2 single-family lots along Wildcat Trail. There is This further redesign and reduction of circulation space and relocation of building has enabled further retention of trees that are existing on the property. So there has been an effort to maintain the trees that buffer the single family homes. The 3D renderings that are provided on this slide are simply massing models, so there hasn't been a form and character developed for this property, but is generally showing the scale and massing of the building and the buildable areas that are being shown on the site plan. So the scale, it would be a 1-story plus a mezzanine where appropriate. And this is roughly the massing and the scale. But as I said, the form and character, the siding, the details are yet to be determined. You can see the changes more clearly on this comparison slide that shows the former proposal and the new proposal that is substantially increasing the commercial unit space and minimizing and reducing that circulation or car-oriented nature of the site plan, as well as integrating and retaining mature trees and more landscaping buffers throughout. The land use bylaw table that is included with this application has been revised to remove that gas station component and just reflect the uses that would be appropriate, like retail, personal services, restaurant, and car wash. I may add that personal services include barber shops, hairdressers. It's that type of, any services provided for personal use of one kind or another. The application meets the policies for the Mixed Use Employment Center, and the revisions that have been done to minimize the disturbance to the adjacent properties would allow a 15-meter setback from the 2 single-family homes. And the applicant and staff understand it is not an ideal adjacency, but it is an accommodation based on some of the concerns of council, and recognizing that the property owners of those 2 lots are not in a position to participate of a rezoning or come to the table with a redevelopment intent currently. The notification sign has been posted in the property, and the application has been available on the city's website. This application does not require a public hearing because it is meeting the Mixed Use Employment Center designation in the official community plan. We are at the committee of the whole meeting. This application has not proceeded forward, so we are at initial consideration by committee, and council may choose to host a public hearing or not require a public hearing and notified ahead of a first reading for the bylaw. The options included in the staff report are the staff recommendation, which is that staff be directed to prepare an amending bylaw. Option number 2 is the staff recommendation, be given direction to prepare a bylaw and a requirement to hold a public hearing. And option number 3 is that the application be deferred for further information. And option number 4 is that the application be denied. So the applicant is here in the room to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Does the applicant wish to say anything to committee or just be available for questions? Sure. Oh, just a button.
Honorable Mayor, councilors, and staff, thank you so much for having us here. My architect is also online to answer questions. Unfortunately, he has gone through COVID this weekend, so he may not come on screen, but when it comes to technical questions, he will be here to answer, but so am I, so the best we can. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I've got Mayor Martin, Councillor Day, and Councillor Baxter. So Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Through the chair, Chair, can you, before I just, on 5.1, the previous one, can I just get clarification? Did we approve, did it go to public hearing or did it not? I was just confused. Okay, thank you. So speaking to now 5.2, I will move the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. On the motion, Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for staff. We've been presented a design with some implied uses, obviously the car wash, right? We're calling it a car wash. But if we approve this plan, could it become something else?
So the permitted uses for, I mean, the car wash is pretty much a given the configuration of the lot. I think the car wash is making the best use of an awkward, long, narrow lot. And the commercial units at the front, the land uses that we are enabling are restaurant, retail, which are fairly broad. So different types of retail that could take place there. Personal services that ranges from, as I said, a barber shop, a hairdresser. I can't think of others, but a normal personal services. We would consider small repair shops to be personal services, providing a service for individuals or people. And I believe that's the extent of the uses that have been requested by the applicant. So there is a breadth and diversity within it, but it is very much, I would say, neighborhood serving and retail oriented and kind of pedestrian focused in a sense. There is no drive-throughs. A restaurant use is not a drive-through in and of itself. So a no drive-through is enabled. It's just a restaurant sit down or pick up.
Okay. Could it become a car lot?
No.
Okay. No. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Councillor Day. I'll go to Councillor Baxter and Parkinson. Michael. You're on mute.
Can't hear my question if I'm muted. I have a question for staff. So as described, the drawings we saw are massing drawings, but is staff confident that they will be able to deal with, through the development permit process, with making sure there are adequate windows and doors, both for access, but also for the appearance of the building, both from the road and internally to the site?
Through the chair to Councillor Baxter. So as part of the staff recommendation, we are asking that as part of the development agreement, we incorporate additional development permit guidelines that should be met and addressed during the development permit stage. And we're specifically asking for architectural features that punctuate and distinguish with windows, entryways, projecting kind of building projections, color and building material that really distinguishes the building facade and creates a public street interface that is active and prominent. And we are similarly asking that the emphasis when it's a building that fronts multiple streets, that it is treated equally with equal importance along Souk Road and Veterans Memorial, that both of those facades that face the street are equally treated with prominence. And we're also avoiding any glazing materials or color or dark tinted glass on any of the windows. So we will have an expectation that there is a strong street interface on Souk Road and Veterans Memorial, and that the building looks to be addressing the street at the corner, even though the main entrances is likely to be located from the parking lot itself, that visually, for all intents and purposes, it looks as though the building is fronting and addressing the corner. So we do feel like with added design guidelines, we can get and set the right expectation with the applicant. And we have had conversations about this application and the expectation about lighting and signage, minimizing that ask. It is being asked that we put in these with the rezoning, we would amend the sign bylaw to incorporate it into the sign district that is typical of Allendale, which only allows one freestanding sign. So we have had conversations about any variation or additional ask for signage will have to come to council for a variance. So we feel confident that we can guide successfully the design of this building with these additional design guidelines and setting a clear expectation of what we would like this building to look like.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think the current layout being proposed is much better than the previous layout, which was rejected. And so I'm very happy to see this, and I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just perhaps mostly for the applicant's information and with, of course, your indulgence, Chair, I plan to make a motion once we've dealt with this. I think the applicant's aware we're currently dealing with 3 corners of this intersection with rezoning proposals. And I think it's an opportunity that as a city, we should take advantage of to really spruce up the right of way and what it should look like and make it as attractive as possible. So I just felt that now is the time to at least flag that so everybody knew that before we voted. And hopefully the chair will give me a chance to make that motion once we complete this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I really appreciate the heads up there. Seeing no further speakers, I will speak. I will. I didn't support it last time, and so I appreciate. I appreciate that we turned it down because I think we've got a better project this time around. I'm pleased that the gas station has been omitted and that there's some more massing. I recognize that the site is really odd to develop. Had it been an average type of lot, I probably still wouldn't be as supportive. But seeing as the applicant has made great strides and is trying to utilize the lot as best as possible, I will be supporting it. And I look forward to Councillor Parkinson's motion after this is dealt with. So with that, we do have a motion on the floor. Those that are opposed, Councillor Parkinson, could you just pop your hand down for me, please? So I don't get your phone mixed up. Thank you. On the motion, those that are opposed? I'm not seeing any opposed, so the motion passes unanimously. Councillor Parkinson, you had a motion?
I did. Motion, I would like it to read that in conjunction with the current rezoning requests, the city create a plan to integrate and enhance public realm improvements at the Souk VMP intersection to create a friendly, aesthetic, and welcoming presence.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
That's my motion.
Yes. Did you wish to motivate?
Yeah, happy to. I honestly, this is an opportunity when we have, as I said, 3 corners of a key intersection coming together, And I think that to take a little effort and hopefully not too much time to really create the balance so that we enhance that intersection. And I'm not looking at anything too grandiose, but certainly consistent and nice, and do as much as we can to make that a nice place, whether you're sitting at the lights or eating an ice cream cone from one of the CRUs on the previous site. I think now's the time that there's just by coincidence we have too much going on at once to not spend some effort to make it as pleasant as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the motion. I don't see any further. Oh, sorry, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to take the opportunity with this motion to remind us to all be thinking of accessibility for these improvements on the corner. I noticed in looking at the plans for not just this, all of tonight's agenda, there's a great deal of detail in the plans that are added to the agenda, but accessible parking or accessible entryways are not noted on any of those plans. And it's something that is much easier to do thinking ahead than trying to retrofit. So just asking that we be mindful, keep our pathways wide, keep our curb cuts low, and make our surfaces as level as we can to help. I see lots of people at that intersection with mobility devices. So it isn't that I'm asking for something that won't be used and that won't benefit us for the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Chair Logan. Just a quick question for Councillor Parkinson. I'm still not too sure, Stuart, what you really want here. And who's paying? Who are you suggesting pays for this then? Is that the city of Colwood's dime? I just want clarification on that right now. Is it independent of what's being this proposal right now? So if you can just clarify that with me so I know what I'm voting on. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Certainly, I think we would have to expect the city to take the lead on preparing the plans. I would think that we're talking mostly of adjustments to what people were doing anyway, and nothing too much grandiose. But presumably the two sites that are up for rezoning, this would be a reasonable request as part of those rezonings. The third site that's partway through its rezoning, there may be some negotiation required. But as I said, if the city can figure out what it wants and it's not too grandiose, I don't see this being too big of a hurdle to overcome.
Could be as simple as changing up from brushed concrete at a corner to something that's saw cut, similar to what's happened at Robey as an example, as an interest, something that's visually appealing, exciting, just some tweaks like that, I think is what Councillor Parkinson is getting at. So I appreciate that. I appreciated that. So not seeing any further hands, I will call the question. Those that are opposed? Don't see any opposed, the motion passes. We'll go on to item 5.3, a report from Josh Andrews, engineering lead on capital projects, 2022 active transportation priority projects. Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as outlined in the report, there are 7 streets identified as 4 priority active transportation projects in 2022 and 2023. Yeah, sorry. How's this? If I speak louder too. In November 2021, designs for the sidewalks and bike lanes were started based on the transportation master plan cross sections. And when the first construction cost estimates came back, the estimates were above the budget amounts for those projects. So staff explored some alternative designs for some of the roads to bring us back within budget. Owens, Ben Homer, and Hagel were selected to explore alternative designs as those roads are unlikely to be developed in the near future and might support a more rural design standard. The city's budget is outlined in the financial consideration part of the report, along with the construction cost estimates of those two options. The preliminary designs and the detailed cost estimates are included as appendices to that report. So now staff is looking for council's recommendation on those options so we can move forward. I'm here to take any questions if you have them. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Josh. I've got Councillors Day and Kobayashi. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So in your report, you suggested that some of these could be delayed, or that some of them might be done with asphalt sidewalk instead of concrete. So I'm not suggesting, I'm just telling you straight out, I don't support asphalt sidewalks. And my reasoning is this: they work, but they cost a great deal over time in maintenance. In fact, I think when we did the comparisons before between 10 years of a concrete sidewalk versus 10 years of a pavement sidewalk, you paid the same amount for the pavement sidewalk. And it's also very hard to motivate future councils to upgrade those paved sidewalks to concrete sidewalks, because, you know, you think you've already got a sidewalk, but really you just have a bigger road. And I think it's important because people don't treat paved sidewalks with the same consideration. And a number of the roads that we're talking about, especially Owens and Ben Homer, are adjacent to Dunsmuir Middle School, which Dunsmuir Middle School is where we've had our most problematic area for people, you know, pulling up their cars onto the sidewalk. We've done numerous bylaw check-ins and trying to redirect people, and it just becomes so very entrenched and very difficult to do. So my question is, with Owens and Ben Homer, is it possible that we could get a quote, just a ballpark from what you've worked on for the full sidewalk and the bike lane, but no lighting?
Through the chair, yes, of course, we can get updated quotes. The lighting, as outlined in the report, it does only comes to about, give me just a moment, savings for all projects, not just those, savings of 162,000. So that's not a massive dent in the budget. However, to address some of your other comments, if just the asphalt aspect is your concern, the altered design that we have outlined in these could feasibly be changed to asphalt concrete sidewalks, however, foregoing the full transportation cross sections that are outlined in that option A, full TMP estimates, which include curbs, parking lanes, which necessitate drainage. Lighting is also included in those, but it was a bit of a scope creep when you look at trying to implement the full TMP cross section, as opposed to this option B, which in this case it's asphalt. We could consider separated concrete at grade. There are drawbacks, but we can certainly look into that too.
Okay, and you also talked about the Fulton sidewalk and bike lane and putting that off. And the reason I'm going to argue that that one should be on our list and maybe closer to the top is because it's more of a safety concern, because it's a steep slope and in the wintertime it's very slippery, and having a curb or a raised sidewalk could be the difference between, you know, being hit and not being hit. But also it is a major school route, whether you're walking down Fulton Road to catch the bus or, and it's very busy. So I think that is important to put on, or maybe council could consider whether they wanted to revisit their priorities level. If, since we know it's costing more, maybe we do fewer projects and reorder our priority. But I think that is an important route. All of the kids who went to school with my kids all either walked to school using at least a portion of Fulton Road, or had to walk home from school. Maybe they got a ride with mom or dad on the way to school, but on the way home, being earlier in the day, they were all on those roads. And also, I just want to suggest that Kelly Road is one candidate that I think could be delayed, because more than likely redevelopment will provide a great deal of infrastructure there as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Day. We'll go with Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that comment on Fulton Road, because I wanted to bring that one up too, because it is a safety concern to me, big time. So I just wanted, maybe we should relook at that again. The second question I have actually is, and thank you very much for that factoid about asphalt. Never thought of that, but I'm assuming the Ben Homer won't be done until we finalize our design on Machosen Road. So we're not doing this twice. Is that the plan here? I just want to confirm that.
My understanding is that we would continue, we can do Ben Homer Road because the sidewalks would be, yes, tying in.
Because it goes up to Machosen, like if I remember seeing your plan, right? It was from.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
Right.
looking, sorry, are you looking at the Machosen Road design parts of this plan? So that part of Machosen Road is the part that is technically north of Soup Road. So it's a very different design standard. That aspect of the designs are just a simple sharrows to make those roads a bikeway to connect up to the Goose at the top of a die road.
Okay,
Does that make sense? Okay.
that's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Councillor Kobayashi. We'll go with Councillor Baxter and then Parkinson.
I'm struggling to read these very small plans that we have. But on the lagoon design, does it include bike lanes?
Thank you for your question. Yes.
Okay. And that's either option would include bike lanes, yes?
Yes, either option. Lagoon was not changed between option A and option B. It was one of those high priority grand designs. So yes, we want to include sidewalks and bike lanes on both sides eventually.
Right.
The project includes one side.
Yeah, so actually that was a question I wrote down, is why was it considered that we might change Hagel, Ben Homer, Owens to asphalt sidewalks, but not Lagoon?
Thanks again through the chair. Hagel, Ben Homer, and Owens were rural streets, not slated for and not foreseen to be redeveloped in the future. That rural sort of design standard might stand up on those sidewalks a little better than they would on the more highly trafficked areas. Lagoon being certainly a higher priority, one of the DCC roads, so the higher standard would stand up on roads like that. Fulton as well. We didn't look at reducing those levels of design.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean by stand up. What is it that standing up to what?
Sorry. We know that there will be a higher trafficked areas, higher pedestrian areas. Lagoon leads down to the lagoon. So we assumed that we wanted the full TMP design on that road specifically.
Okay. So there's a number of ways to look at this, and one of the ways to look at it is that if you're dealing with a road like Owens, Hagel, or Ben Homer, people are accustomed to having available some parking on the street, and normally that means parking on the shoulder. And as I understand it, with the concrete sidewalks, there would be opportunities to create some parking on the street still by having the sidewalk close to the property line, and then a space where the cars can park before you get to the drive lane. And that's actually something that would make those residents very happy, I'm sure. Whereas on Lagoon, nobody parks on Lagoon, except in the very southern portions. It's very the parts nearest the ocean, and there are parking lanes there already. So I think that there's a real there's a number of reasons to argue that Owens, Hagel, and Ben Homer should be concrete sidewalks. And I think the point made by Councillor Day is relevant here as well. So I would ask, do you have any numbers on what the life cycle costs of an asphalt sidewalk versus a concrete sidewalk might be, given that an asphalt, layer of asphalt, very soon after you lay it, starts to oxidize and deteriorate, and rarely lasts more than 20 years before it has to be repaired, whereas there's still concrete laid by the Romans that's in use. So have you run numbers on that?
Thank you for the question. No, we don't have hard numbers at this time, but we can certainly go back and work with McElhaney to quantify that for council.
Okay, well, given that we have our sustainable assets system, I think we should always know what the difference in maintenance is. And as we don't know that, and I suspect that it would prove rather negative for asphalt, I'll be opposing the new option and sticking with the TMP standard. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Parkinson, and then Mayor Martin and Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Chair. A number of questions, and then I'd be happy to make motions if that's appropriate. My first question, probably for Jen, is the first line talks about borrowing for all these projects, and I'm just wondering why that is. Surely this is infrastructure funding. The gas tax funding is for this type of project, and I think we have some of that set aside, don't we? What was the thinking behind a loan bylaw for all this work?
Certainly, through the chair, thank you for the question. The purpose of the loan borrowing proposition is that there is insufficient gas tax funding for all of these projects. You are correct. This year, we're projecting we'll have approximately $1.2 million in gas tax at year end. These funds have not been committed. So there is some gas tax funding available, but there is insufficient for the priorities that council has identified in total. And to note, a number of these projects are either fully or partially DCC funded as well. We are coming to a position where there is insufficient cash available for the DCC program at this point. So some of that would need to be debt financed, which would then be serviced through road DCC cash as it actualizes in the near term.
Yeah, as I understood it, there was talk of borrowing for the VMP and Latoria roundabout, which would mean then not use DCC funds. So the road DCC funds might be available. But anyway, I'm sure you can balance the books much better than I'll ever be able to. A lot of the costs involved in these projects, and certainly on Fulton and on Lagoon, are storm sewer works, which presumably are integrated with our stormwater master plan and relate to those kind of works. Would that make them eligible to come out of a different budget, or does that factor into anything?
In terms of the funding that we have available, no, not sufficiently for these projects.
You don't have money tucked away in a storm sewer to build someday, but
There is a portion of the sustainable infrastructure balance, but again, it is insufficient.
okay. Then I wanted to explore the idea of delaying the Fulton Road sidewalk to 2024. I'm not sure why that would make sense, especially if we're borrowing money. The cost of borrowing is probably less than construction inflation. Is it just to split up the projects into separate tranches of projects, or is there any good reason to delay it that long? Josh, can you comment on that?
Yes, Jen, or I can comment on that. The reason of delaying that would be to bring us back within budget that we've already planned for in 2022, 2023.
Okay, so, but again, if we're borrowing money, I guess it doesn't really matter, but not to me anyway. So we can talk about that. Like the others, I'm not a big fan of the asphalt sidewalks proposed for Ben, Homer, and Owens. I do like the option B. I'm just not sure why, rather than reducing the curbs and the parking bays and whatnot, couldn't be done, but left sidewalk and concrete rather than switching it to asphalt. Do you see any issues with if council chose to just go with option B, but with concrete rather than asphalt?
Thank you for the question. Nothing insurmountable. Of course, there are some issues with putting in concrete and versus sidewalk. We'd need to consider the final grade of the sidewalk to make sure that it meets with any future development of the road. But I think we could certainly do option B with concrete sidewalks at grade as opposed to asphalt.
Perfect. I'll be happy to make that motion at the appropriate time. Any comments on the lighting? I think it's on hydropole luminaires. Is that? Do we know what standard that would meet, if any, or is that going to end up with pretty good lighting? Okay, lighting, not much better than what we have now. Any comments?
Thanks for the question. The lighting designs are still preliminary, so I don't have exact details on what the lighting will look like. We are hoping to, of course, increase lighting standards, but I'm not sure at this point where that we would land after detailed design.
Okay, fair enough. And I see the proposal is to run a paved path through the cemetery. Is that feasible? Are we allowed to build paths through there?
Thanks for the question. Yes, so the city has a statutory right-of-way through the cemetery for the path to the Goose. We might have to shift some things around based on what's there and what will be within our SROW, but yes, it's feasible. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chair, I'm happy to make motions on a whole bunch of this stuff if you'd like me to now, or do you want to wait till everybody else speaks?
Yeah, let's wait to see what the first time speakers have to say. And I just want to clarify, Josh, that when you say move things around, you're not talking about grave sites. You never know.
Does that bother you? No, I'm not talking about grave sites. Some of the existing gravel path appears to be outside the statutory right of way, so we'd want to make sure that we are staying within our lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. If Mr. Earl was here, I would be not making these statements, but posing them as questions so that Mr. Earl could answer them. But I had a quite a thorough discussion with Mr. Earl last week, and I feel confident with the things I'm about to say. In regards to asphalt versus concrete, it's my understanding that asphalt represents about 25 years worth of lifespan, whereas concrete will represent about 75 years. Mr. Earl expressed to me that asphalt really is quite an appropriate product to be using in the West Coast, that if you're dealing with significant cold weather, you'll see significant cracking with that, but that it's quite appropriate. You will still need to repave it every 25 years. But when I asked the question, the answer was it is still cheaper than concrete that would last for 75. I look forward to hearing back from staff to confirm or not confirm that. So I will look to staff to answer that question moving forward. Saying all that, I will use Heatherbell as the example. Heatherbell has a concrete sidewalk, a asphalt sidewalk, because it was the only thing that we could get. The developer was willing to put a temporary, quote, temporary sidewalk in using asphalt, using concrete. I have seen somewhere between 30 and 50 kids a day using that, and we wouldn't have had that had we not gone with asphalt. And so I challenge this council that I would prefer to have more sidewalks in this community than less. And Councillor Day uses it with other things, and she talks about how we all have champagne taste with a beer budget. And I think this is a really significant one with that. If I can get more sidewalks in this community that are asphalt, and then we need to resurface them in 25 years, I'd much rather see that than less sidewalks, but they're really nice because they're concrete. So I would really hope that this committee would see the value in the asphalt. I do, and would much prefer to see that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. First time speakers, Jansen, myself, and then I'll go to second time speakers, Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was very eloquent, Mr. Mayor, but I just wonder if we're selling ourselves short here. All of these routes are important. Owen, Ben Homer, Hagel, they lead right to schools, which is why they're a priority. Fulton is near to a school, but you know, I would like to see a situation where we don't sell ourselves short. We should have our cake and eat it too, to some degree. But you know, if a developer came forward and put this to us, we'd say no, and we'd laugh them out of the room. But yet we're, you know, willing to entertain sort of a lesser option. And so I hear what you're saying, more is better, but I just wonder if we, you know, out of the 75-year lifespan of a concrete sidewalk, that one more year to wait for Fulton Road to get done, I don't think would be too much to ask. And then we do it properly, as we would expect from a developer working in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. I agree. Council years ago, I think it might have been my first or second term, actually resolved not to build any more asphalt sidewalks, that they ought to be concrete. And I guess, you know, I understand the arguments, but what are some of the main complaints that we hear from existing neighborhoods? You guys only invest in new development. We only see new sidewalks in Royal Bay, yada, yada, yada. So I think it's very disingenuous for us to build an asphalt sidewalk in an existing neighborhood. They deserve better. I think they deserve concrete, just like new development gets. And I think, you know, it has the ability to last longer, has the ability to spruce up a neighborhood. And it's personally, I think having it above grade, to me, it feels safer, and it's a major transportation route. I also think we went through all that time to go through the cross sections for the transportation master plan, and we ought to be living up to those cross sections. Otherwise, we just wasted our time. So, and we also spent a lot of time prioritizing the list, and so I think we deserve to build these projects properly, as designed and as we approved through these cross sections. So, you know, and if we can build in Fulton Road into the borrowing now, that would be great. But I'm not sure what that, you know, if it makes sense to spread it over the 23-24 budget year. But I really think that we should be going with option A, frankly, with the lighting if possible. And I think we're safe if we have to borrow. I think residents understand that there's a cost of installing this infrastructure, which they have been asking for, frankly. So I'll only be supporting option A if that motion gets put on the table. Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Day.
Thank you. I understand where we are at in this process, and my number one consideration is more about safety than about the budget, to be quite honest. I mean, we can borrow the money, we can pay it off over time. I really also feel strongly that concrete sidewalks are safer for kids than asphalt sidewalks. And my reasoning for that is simply that there's a separation of grade. The asphalt sidewalk is taller, it's less easy for a car to come across the sidewalk and hit you. And that is my experience. That is why I'm here at City Hall, is because my daughter was almost sideswiped on Wishart Road walking to school with me and my other kids. And an inattentive driver probably lost, weaved on the road, and she was ahead of me because she was fast. And that is why I am here at City Hall, is to make this community better for the families that live here. So I know there's way more sidewalks than the ones that we have on our list here that need to be done. I know that it's difficult, but I would like to move the recommendation with the exception of moving Fulton Road to 2024. I want to keep it in 2023 and proceed with the loan authorization bylaw process, because we've got to get our kids, if not walking to school, because I understand mornings with children, at least walking home from school and having friends and relationships and places where they can go for safety, including the sidewalk that they're walking on.
Thank you, Councillor Day. We have a motion on the floor. On the motion, A. A, and then moving up. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. So I've heard some Councillor Day, and I've heard a couple other people talk about concrete and that concrete elevates. And I just want to be clear, I'm not talking about asphalt as in it being flush to the road. I'm talking about it with a curb and gutter and everything else, exactly like Heather Bell is. And so I just want to be clear that I'm not, and I agree that if we're talking about, like, if it looks like it's a bicycle path that's just been added onto the road and that it's not delineated or anything else, then no, I'm not supportive of that either. And I agree completely that I don't think that that's safe. However, if we're talking about something that has a curb and gutter, I struggle to understand how it would be less safe than a concrete. And I just want to be clear with what I'm talking about. So when I talk about that I'm supportive of asphalt, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about it being flush to the road. I'm not sure what I'm going to do on the motion, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I'll go with Councillor Parkinson and then Baxter and Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm quite happy with the motion, except for the discussion of Ben Homer and Owens, where I believe option 2 with concrete sidewalk is the appropriate choice. So I'd like to make that amendment to the motion. I would like to move that for Ben Homer and Owens, option 2 be selected with a concrete sidewalk rather than asphalt. And I believe this satisfies most of the concerns heard at the table. I know the mayor talks about asphalt's okay if you've got a curb and gutter. Well, option 2 doesn't have a curb and gutter, so maybe he'll be prepared to spend a little more on concrete rather than asphalt on those 2 streets. Also, I think we have to be realistic, and whatever costs for asphalt may have been in years gone by, the price of oil has doubled or tripled over the last little while. Who knows how much of a difference there is between asphalt and concrete going forward. I mean, none of us can answer that, or nobody can. But anyhow, hopefully that kind of motivation is that on Ben Homer and Owens, with this amendment, we would be talking about a floating sidewalk, no curb and gutter, no parking bays, just a sidewalk in concrete. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. On the amendment, I understand Councillor Kobayashi wants to speak on the amendment.
Just further to Councillor Parkinson's, what Councillor Parkinson just said right now. I guess what I'm having problems with right now is that, you know, everything we were talking about asphalt, life cycle costs. I heard what the mayor has said, what the CAO has said, trust them. So, but it's all anecdotal to me right now. And I don't feel comfortable making a multi-million-dollar decision based on all this anecdotal stuff here. So is it possible, please, I don't know if I want to defer this, but I'd like to see the total life cycle cost, concrete versus asphalt. I mean, it's an issue that's still sitting in my head. And as Councillor Parkinson has said, I think we may be surprised at what the cost of asphalt is now. I think you're going to be not very happy with the costs. And so it's something that I'm not willing to make a decision. I feel uncomfortable because we're just sitting here where maybe, should, could, someone said, let's have the real data. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Baxter, did you want to speak on the amendment or on the main motion?
Yes, I do want to speak on the amendment. And originally, I put my hand up because I was unclear on what the motion is. So could you clarify that?
Sir, the original motion was for option A. So as presented in the staff report, that's curb, gutter, sidewalk, parking bay. And the change to that was to move the Fulton Road project up to 2022-23.
Okay.
And the amendment was for Ben Homer and Owens now to be asphalt with no parking bays, etc.
Okay, I will be voting against the amendment. And that's
Point of order. Point of order.
What's your
The
point of order?
amendment is to make asphalt and Owens concrete sidewalks, not asphalt.
Sorry, could you say that again?
The amendment was to make Owens and Ben Homer sidewalks concrete, not asphalt,
but with option B, right?
with option B. So floating, no curb and gutter, no parking bays, but concrete sidewalk, not asphalt sidewalk.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so I'll be voting against the amendment, and partially because I have great sympathy with Councillor Kobayashi's position. I don't think we have adequate information on the cost of asphalt versus concrete over life cycles. I don't think we have any cross sections through these proposals. we have plans that I struggle to read. Maybe it's my age, but given the difficulty of reading these small pages of plans and the lack of cross sections, and now Councillor Parkinson's talking about some of these sidewalks being floating. Well, I want to nail them down. I want to know exactly what height they are before I vote for them. Now, if we go with the TMP cross sections, I know what I'm getting. With the other options, I'm not clear on what I'm getting. So I'll be voting against the amendment, and I will be voting with the original motion, but I'd certainly be voting for also anybody who wants to move delaying this until we have better information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Before I get to Councillor Jansen, I too will be opposing the amendment. I just think, as Councillor Jansen had alluded to earlier, we expect a certain standard when developers build their sidewalk and infrastructure, and I'm not sure why we wouldn't live up to the same standard, and I'm not sure why we would treat an existing neighborhood any differently than we would treat or expect in a new development. And so I think from a continuity perspective, and in a transportation master plan, I can't support the amendment. So, Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've been around the horn a couple of times here, and there's still confusion. I'm going to put it out there and just make the motion to defer.
Okay, so I have a motion to defer. I just want to make sure that staff are aware of some of the questions that committee has. So you know what, why we're deferring and what work needs to get done. I see John's actually turned on his camera, so maybe so Josh or John, I don't know who wishes to take a stab at it. John?
Thank you, Chair Logan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you betcha.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to point out a few things. We understand, or at least I get a real sense of where council's going here. And I think from staff's point of view, option B was brought forward just to give council some options with regards to if funding was a consideration and you wanted to look at alternatives. Staff wanted you to know that there were other options if 7.8 million wasn't palatable for council, even under a borrowing scenario, because that's still a significant amount of funds required. Certainly the idea of going to concrete over asphalt has merit. And I would suggest that no matter how much work staff does, we'd never be able to come back with a finite number that says, okay, with life cycle costs and so on, it would be 3 times as much or twice as much. There's a lot that goes into that, existing sub base, temperatures, grade, the topography around the area, what kind of drainage you have in the area. So I can certainly say that concrete would have significantly longer life cycles. That asphalt sidewalk under ideal conditions would have a significant life cycle cost as well that we would see. I think I've seen asphalt roads paved well that get into the 30 and 40 year time frames when everything's done ideally with proper drainage, best sub base and so on. So I think what we're looking at here in the end is, I think if what I'm hearing appears option A can go there, we can follow the TMP designs. We do have most of those cross sections. And my only concern about deferring is that we are getting further into the construction cycle, and the longer we take, we won't be able to put out the tender for the construction part of it because we do have to complete all of these designs. And I just want to caution that there'd be an expectation that we may be creeping into even later into 23 to complete all these works if we defer for too long.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that explanation. So on the motion to defer, I will, yes, Amanda. Sure. That sounds good. Motion to refer. Okay, is everyone comfortable with me calling the question on the motion, on the referral motion? Those that are opposed? Sorry, Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Baxter, are you opposed?
Yes.
Councillor Baxter and Councillor Logan are opposed. So the motion passes. It's referred. Thank you. Okay, move on to 5.4, report from Rachel Buskey on the Natural Assets Initiative, inventory and final report. Rachel.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about the natural asset inventory. Council directed staff to work with the Municipal Natural Asset Initiative at their regular meeting of Council on the 1st of February 2021 to create an inventory of Colwood's natural assets. The objective of asset management, as you're aware, is to meet a desired level of service in the most cost-effective manner and through the management of assets for both present and also for future needs. In this context, local governments are increasingly recognising the importance of quantifying, managing and accounting for natural assets in a similar manner as built assets, for example, grey infrastructure. And this is because natural assets can provide a diverse range of services for present and future needs without the associated cost of construction for built assets to provide a similar level of service. The Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan of 2019 and identified that natural assets are the asset class least understood by the city. And as a result of the work that we've just undertaken, the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, the following products have been created. Firstly, a Natural Asset Initiative final report, a Natural Assets Inventory, which is a register of all natural assets in Colwood, and a Natural Assets Dashboard identifying where each natural asset is physically located. Just going back to the Sustainable Asset Replacement Plan, this document classified Colwood's natural assets into three broad categories: trees, creeks and streams, and the waterfront. And just as next steps to this process, to continue building our knowledge of the natural assets in Colwood, the urban forest strategy will fill essential knowledge gaps about the city's tree and forest resources. The forthcoming urban forest strategy, which we believe will be coming out in 2022 or early 2023, will become very similar to the Stormwater Master Plan as a service area plan. So the Stormwater Master Plan is like a service area plan for the stormwater network. Well, the urban forest strategy will play a similar role for the trees that we have in terms of the natural assets. The city's Stormwater Master Plan of 2018 is currently being updated, and the 2022 Stormwater Master Plan will help us understand much more about the condition and overall health of our natural drainage infrastructure. The Watershed Stewardship Plan is strongly focused on Greenshore's approach to protect the sensitive ecology and archaeology of its coastline and lagoon areas. And finally, I want to mention that the Low Carbon Resilience Project is currently working on a climate action plan for the city, which integrates the work of the Natural Assets Initiative as well. And so the Natural Assets Initiative will assist the city's decision-making on long-term management of its natural assets and to identify locations where the city might focus its attention to ensure the continuity and even the potential improvement of the service delivery for this asset class. And finally, I just wanted to go back to the recommendation that the natural asset inventory be incorporated into the city's asset management framework, including the city's ArcGIS database, and that a natural asset register be maintained and updated to support a best practice asset management program. Thank you so much.
To Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation with the staff report, which is to incorporate it into our city's asset management framework and to maintain the register. And I'd just like to point out that if you read through the very lengthy report that was included, and this is amazing because this is a difficult elephant to eat, but it does show that our natural assets are having positive impacts on our community, including stormwater attenuation, retention of water, and ameliorating things like the heat dome effect. But changes in their condition does need to be noted. Since we're at the very beginning of our asset management for our natural assets, it's going to take quite a lot to get our asset inventory to a condition that really informs our community. So I just wanted to mention that this would be an ideal project for citizens to volunteer and be involved in, something that we've been looking at on our agenda, both the near and long term, to look at volunteer engagement. And volunteers like to have something purposeful to be doing, and this would be one of those things that would make a difference by showing what the condition is and being able to perhaps do things to improve the retention of our wetlands, the retention of the trees that are helping to hold the slopes, etc. So I think this is a big step for a relatively small municipality, but one that is worth doing. And I think we will find that our citizens are ready, able, and willing to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Kobayashi.
Through the chair, just a quick question, Rachel. Timeframe is he's just uploading this data, right? So will we have this ready in a month then, say? Is that what the goal here is? I just want to be clear on that.
Yes, and through the chair, and thank you for the question. The information is just there. We already have it. We have the full register, and so it just needs to be uploaded. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'll call the question. Those that are opposed? Don't see any opposed. The motion passes. So looking for motion to adjourn. Oh, Councillor Jansen. Those opposed? None opposed. Thank you. And then Mayor Martin, I believe we're going in camera.
Yeah. So Michael and Stuart, you guys should have a second link for going into camera. So do both of you have it? Michael does. Stuart, do you have it?